I never considered my life anything special. Laura and I lived like many other couples in a small house on the outskirts of town, with a green lawn and a cozy veranda. Our neighbors grew roses, but we limited ourselves to a couple of lilac bushes by the window. In the morning, I left for work, and when I returned in the evening, the house always greeted me with the smell of coffee, my wife's laughter, or her music playing in the kitchen. Sometimes I thought maybe we should have children, but we kept putting it off. Laura wanted a little more freedom, and I agreed. Deep down, I believed we had our whole lives ahead of us, and we could do it all. My name was Daniel Reed, 34 years old, an engineer in a construction company. Life was smooth without any sudden turns, but I thought that was what happiness was. I loved stability. I loved the house we were building together, not just the walls, but everything inside. The traditions, the habits, the little rituals that only we understood. I remember the first time I saw Laura. It was 8 years ago, in a cafe near campus. I'd just graduated and was looking for a job. I had little money, so I ordered the cheapest coffee so I could sit at my laptop and fill out my resume. She walked in as if a light had been turned on. Tall, with chestnut hair falling over her shoulders, with a smile that took my breath away. I even dropped my cup, it seemed so silly and banal. Laura laughed, helped me pick up the pieces, and said, "You should order in paper cups. It's safer." I didn't even know then that a few years later I'd call her my wife. Our relationship developed rapidly. We were young, and we thought love was all you needed. We had no money, but we believed that only the best was yet to come. Laura had a knack for turning ordinary evenings into celebrations. She'd light candles even for a pizza from a box, put on music, and dance around the kitchen in her pajamas. I laughed, looking at her, and thought, if this isn't happiness, then what is? We got married 2 years later. The wedding was modest, but for me, it was the most beautiful in the world. In her white dress, Laura looked like she'd stepped off the cover of a magazine. When she said "I do," I was sure it was forever. Time passed. We acquired a house, furniture, jobs, and loans. Life was no longer a fairy tale, but I never complained. I believed that love isn't just passion and romance, but also everyday chores. I brought in the paycheck, Laura took care of the house. Sometimes we went on vacation, sometimes we just sat on the porch with a glass of wine. Laura often said, "We're lucky, Dan. You and I, we have a roof over our heads and plans. What more could we need?" I nodded and agreed. But now, looking back, I realize perhaps I was too confident in our life's stability. I thought trust was a solid foundation that couldn't be shattered. I never even considered that one day everything could collapse. Back then, on that day, I didn't yet know my world would be turned upside down. It all started like an ordinary evening. I returned home a little earlier than usual. I was carrying a grocery bag. I'd bought pasta, fresh vegetables, and a bottle of wine. Laura was waiting for me in the kitchen, wearing her light, bright house dress. She smiled when I walked in. "You look like a real chef today," she joked, seeing the ingredients. "Well, at least once I'll try to cook something better than scrambled eggs," I replied. We laughed, chatted, cooked dinner together. I loved evenings like these. Everything was simple, but that's where I saw our happiness. After dinner, Laura suddenly said, "You know, I've been craving something sweet. Maybe cake." I laughed. "It's late, Laura. The store is almost closed, but you're my hero, right?" She snuggled close to me and smiled. "Just half an hour." I looked into her eyes and, of course, agreed. That's how it all started. It seemed like a small thing going to the store for a cake. 15 minutes there, 15 minutes back. But it was that half hour that divided my life into before and after. I put on my jacket, kissed her on the cheek, and said, "Wait for me. I'll be back soon." She smiled and waved. I closed the door behind me, unaware that at that moment I'd ended one life and stepped into another. The walk to the store was familiar. I walked, wondering which cake to choose, chocolate or fruit. I imagined returning home, Laura opening the box, and us drinking tea together, laughing. It seemed like thousands of evenings like this lay ahead. But fate has a way of shattering even the strongest illusions. I walked down a familiar street, shoving my hands into my jacket pockets. The sky was already darkening, and the streetlights were coming on one by one. casting a soft glow on the sidewalk. The air was cool and crisp, the kind you only get at the beginning of autumn. I walked quickly, but inside I felt a strange calm. It felt like the whole world was in its place. The house was standing. My wife was waiting. A cozy evening lay ahead. The store was a 10-minute walk away. I loved these short walks. They helped me collect my thoughts after work. I thought about Laura, about how we met, about how maybe it was time to really think about having children. She'd recently mentioned being tired of the same old evenings. Maybe a child would change our lives, make them complete. I imagined us revisiting this topic over cake. Maybe that would be the right moment. A glass of wine, a sweet dessert, laughter. The store was almost empty. A few shoppers were stocking up on groceries for tomorrow, and a couple of teenagers were laughing by the soda fridge. I went to the cake display. There weren't many, the selection was modest, but I still stood there for a long time, hesitating. Chocolate or berry? Laura likes strawberries, I thought, and picked up a berry cake. At the checkout, the cashier lazily scanned my order. I paid with my card and headed back. The cake, wrapped in a cardboard box, was in a bag. It seemed important, almost symbolic. I walked down the street, smiling. Everything seemed simple. I was going home, where the woman I loved was waiting for me. What could be more reliable? And yet, there was a niggling unease within me, subtle. I remembered Laura's expression when she asked for the cake. There was something in her eyes. Intense? Too insistent. I chalked it up to a whim. But now, as I walked back, I wondered, why did she need a cake so late at night? Nonsense, I told myself. She just wanted something sweet. It happens. I pushed the thoughts aside and quickened my pace. When I reached the house, the clock read 21 o'clock. I'd only been gone for 25 minutes. The house looked the same as always. The lights were on in the kitchen. The same pair of shoes from that morning were on the porch. Everything was familiar. But as soon as I inserted the key into the lock, a strange silence washed over me. Usually, Laura would greet me right away, calling from the kitchen or turning on music. Now the house was suspiciously quiet. I entered and closed the door behind me. "Laura?" I called. There was no answer. I placed the bag with the cake on the kitchen table and listened, and then I heard muffled sounds coming from the bedroom upstairs. At first, I couldn't tell if it was music or the television, but a second later my heart sank. It was laughter, her laughter, and some other low voice. I froze, unable to move. Everything inside me went cold. No, this can't be. I heard something wrong. I took a step toward the stairs, then another. Every creak of the steps echoed in my ears like thunder. The laughter grew louder. Now I heard more than just that. I heard breathing, fast, ragged, and a groan. The world around me swam. I went up to the second floor and stopped in front of the bedroom door. It was closed and locked. A dim light filtered through the crack. I stood and stared at that door as if it were a death sentence. Thoughts raced through my head. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's the TV. Maybe the neighbor just came in, but my heart knew the truth. My heart was already screaming. I pushed the door, and I saw it all. Sophia, my wife, my Laura, was there, on our bed, with another man. Their bodies were entwined, her hair spread across the pillow. She turned her head and met my eyes. I froze. I still held the cake box in my hands. How ridiculous it looked, a husband with a dessert. That was supposed to be the symbol of a romantic evening, and a wife who, at that very moment, was destroying our entire world. Time seemed to stand still. We looked at each other, she with horror, I with emptiness. Then I heard my own voice. "Hoarse, alien, are you serious?" Laura screamed, pushed the man away, and pulled the sheets up. "Daniel, it's not what you think." I laughed. The laugh was bitter, insane. "Not what I think. Laura, I'm holding a cake. I thought we were going to have tea, and you decided to have fun in a different way." The man jumped out of bed, hastily pulling on his jeans. "Listen, man, I'm leaving. Go away," I said quietly. "Go away while you can." He rushed out of the room without even looking at me. The door slammed, and we were alone. Laura was sitting on the bed, wrapped in a sheet. Her shoulders were shaking. "Daniel, please, listen." I put the cake on the nightstand and sat in the chair opposite. "I'm listening. Come on, explain it to me." "Why?" She started crying. I don't know. It was a mistake. It doesn't mean anything. I looked at her and felt something die inside me. A mistake. Laura, you knew I'd only be out for 20 minutes, and you chose those 20 minutes to ruin our marriage. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. I was silent. One thought swirled in my head. That's it. This is the end. In 20 minutes, my life has been ruined. Our first dates, our wedding, all those evenings sitting on the porch flashed before my eyes. It all turned out to be a lie. I stood up and looked at her. Laura, I don't know what will happen next, but know one thing. I will never be able to forget this night. Never. I left the room, leaving her crying. Downstairs in the kitchen, I opened the cake box. I took out a knife, cut a piece, and placed it on a plate. I sat down at the table and ate it, not even tasting it. It was the bitterest cake I've ever tasted. I sat in the kitchen, staring at the plate with the half-eaten piece of cake. The light bulb above the table illuminated the white icing and the pink strawberries on top, and it seemed mocking. Half an hour ago, I'd chosen this cake with a smile, thinking about how I'd make my wife happy, and now that piece of dessert had become a symbol of the most bitter night of my life. I heard her footsteps upstairs. Laura paced the bedroom, crying, then quieting down. I tried to count my breaths to calm myself, but everything inside was burning. My heart was pounding so loudly it felt like it would break my ribcage. She came down 20 minutes later. In a simple robe, her hair pulled back into a bun. Her face was puffy from crying. She paused at the kitchen threshold as if afraid to enter. Daniel, I looked up. Sit, I said. My voice sounded hoarse and alien. She sat down across from me. We were silent. I looked at her hands clutching the hem of her robe. Once, I considered those hands my closest, and now they felt alien. I want to explain everything, she began. Please, give me a chance. I chuckled. Explain? Laura, I went out for cake. 20 minutes. You knew I'd be back, and yet you did it. What's there to explain? She looked down. I didn't think. It was madness. You didn't think? I interrupted. You thought enough to take off your dress. You thought enough to get into our bed with a strange man. Her shoulders shook. Daniel, that doesn't mean I don't love you. I laughed loudly, harshly, so loudly that it scared me. Do you love me? Laura, you betrayed me when I was just 2 blocks away. How can you love and do that at the same time? She reached out to me, but I pulled away. Understand, she said, I felt empty. Lately, things have become quiet between us. I was searching for something I was missing. I slammed my fist on the table. What was it you were missing, Laura? You had a home, a husband, love, stability. I worked for us. I built all of this for you. Tears streamed down her cheeks again. I know, and that's why I hate myself now. I stood up and paced the kitchen. My head was pounding. Images flashed before my eyes. Laura in her wedding dress, our first kiss. The morning on the beach during our honeymoon. It was all crumbling before my eyes. Who is he? I asked, stopping. She winced. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Laura hesitated. His name is Richard. I felt anger boiling inside me. Richard? Your colleague? She nodded. It all became clear. I remembered how she'd talked about him, how he was just a friend, how he helped with projects. I believed him. I believed her every smile, every word. I sat back down at the table. Laura, I said quietly, do you realize you've ruined everything? She nodded. I understand. But maybe we can. I can prove to you that everything can be fixed. Fixable? I looked her straight in the eyes. How can you fix a painting if you shatter it into dust? How can you regain my trust? She began to cry again. We sat like that for a long time. I didn't shout. She didn't make any more excuses. Just silence broken by her sobs and the ticking of the clock. A war raged inside me. One part wanted to throw her out, slam the door, end it. Another clung to the memories, to the love I still felt. I knew one thing. No matter what choice I made, life would never be the same. The clock struck midnight. I got up. Go to bed, Laura. I need to think. She stood up and walked to the door, but turned around before leaving. I love you, Daniel. I didn't answer. Alone, I looked at the cake again. Its white icing glistened in the lamplight. I wanted to throw it in the trash, but I didn't. Because this cake was now a symbol of how easily happiness can turn to dust. I turned off the light and went into the living room. I lay down on the sofa and, for the first time in 8 years, fell asleep not next to my wife. I woke up with the sun shining directly on my face. It took me a moment to realize where I was. The couch was heavy, the blanket thrown to the floor, my head pounding, as if I'd been drinking all night. But I hadn't been drinking. I was just trying to sleep, but instead I tossed and turned until dawn, waking every hour from the same memory. Laura, her eyes, her hands on someone else's body. I sat up and rubbed my face with my palms. The world was gray, as if the colors had faded. Even the morning light seemed cold. The kitchen smelled of coffee. Laura was there. She stood by the stove in her robe, her hair loose, as if nothing had happened, as if last night was a nightmare that could be erased. "Good morning," she said quietly. I nodded and sat at the table. "Did you even sleep?" she asked. "On the couch," I answered dryly. We fell silent. She placed a mug of coffee in front of me and sat down opposite me. Her gaze darted from my hands to the plate, then back to me. "Daniel," she began, "I understand I ruined everything yesterday, but please, don't rush into things. Give me a chance to prove I can fix it." I took a sip of coffee. It was bitter. "Fix it? Laura, I don't know what fix it means. I saw you with him. I heard you. I can't unsee that." She clasped her hands. "I'm ready for anything. Do you want me to quit my job? Do you want me to change my number, delete all my contacts? I'll sever all ties with him. You think it's just him?" I interrupted. "It's because you chose to betray me." She lowered her eyes. Silence fell over the house again. The clock was ticking. I looked at her and tried to figure out, did I still love her, or had that feeling died last night? But my heart didn't know the answer. It beat painfully, but was silent. Suddenly I stood up. "I need to go out," I said. "Where?" "Just go out." I grabbed my jacket and left the house. It was cool outside. I walked aimlessly, just forward, past the parking lot, past the bakery, through the park. People around me were smiling, strolling with their children, walking their dogs. Their world was whole. Mine was shattered. In the park, I sat down on a bench. I stretched out my legs and closed my eyes. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was Mark, my friend. We've known each other since college. We've been through a lot together. I hesitated, but then answered. "Dan, hi, how are you?" he asked cheerfully. I was silent for a second. Then I said, "Not well." "What happened?" I took a deep breath. "Laura cheated on me. Yesterday." Silence on the other end. Then Mark let out a quiet breath. "Dan, are you serious?" "Absolutely." I caught them in the bedroom. "Jesus, Dan. Look, hold on. I'll come over if you want." "No, you don't have to. I don't know what to do." We talked for about 10 minutes. Mark didn't give advice, he just listened. And that was important. In the end, he said, "Brother, it's up to you. But know this. You have a choice, leave or try to forgive. Just ask yourself, can you live with this?" I hung up and sat for a long time, staring at the pavement. I returned home by noon. Laura was still in the kitchen. A cup of tea sat in front of her, untouched. She looked tired, as if she hadn't slept at all. "You're back?" she said. "Yes." I sat down across from her. "Laura," I began, "I talked to Mark. He said one thing. I have a choice, leave or forgive." Her eyes filled with tears. "And you?" I raised my hand. "Don't rush. I didn't say what I've chosen, but I know one thing. I need time." She nodded, biting her lip. We sat in silence. A struggle raged within me. One part screamed, "Leave her, she's not worth a minute." Another whispered, "She's your why. You've been together for years. Maybe we can get it all back." I knew this would be the hardest choice of my life. The day dragged on painfully long. I tried to read, but the letters blurred together. Laura walked around the house quietly, like a shadow. We barely spoke. That evening, she asked cautiously, "Daniel, maybe we should see a psychologist. A family therapist." I looked at her. "Do you think a therapist will make me forget what I saw?" She bit her lip and remained silent. That night, I lay down on the couch again, but sleep wouldn't come. I could hear her tossing and turning upstairs, the creaking of the bed, and I understood. We lived in the same house, but separated by a chasm, and no one but me would decide whether I could cross that chasm. On the third day after the betrayal, the house seemed empty, even though we were both inside. Laura moved quietly, as if afraid to disturb the fragile peace we were trying to maintain. I, too, avoided unnecessary words. A wall hung between us, invisible and as solid as concrete. I left for work earlier than usual and returned later. I didn't want to see her eyes. I didn't want to hear excuses. But still, every evening, I found her in the kitchen or living room waiting, ready to talk. On Friday evening, she set dinner on the table. I made pasta, your favorite, with basil. I looked at the plate, then at her. "Thank you," he replied dryly. We ate in silence, only the clatter of forks and the rustle of the wind outside the window. At some point, she couldn't take it anymore. "Daniel," I know you're angry, but please don't ignore me completely. Tell me what you think. I put my fork down. Okay. I think you've destroyed everything we built. I think when I look at you, I don't see a wife, but a woman who chose someone else's hands over mine. I think it hurts to breathe when I remember that evening. Tears glistened in her eyes, but she didn't look away. I deserved it, she said quietly. But, Dan, I swear, I love you. It was a mistake. I didn't have feelings for him. A mistake. I clenched my fists. A mistake is spilling coffee on your shirt, and what you did was a choice. She covered her face with her hands. I felt that emptiness inside again, endless, cold. A couple of days later, I realized I couldn't do this anymore. I needed space. I took a day off and went to my parents' house outside the city. My father met me at the gate. He immediately realized something was wrong. His gaze was serious, attentive. What happened, son? We were sitting on the veranda, drinking tea. I told him everything. About the store, about the cake, about what I saw in the bedroom. Father was silent, listening. Then he said, "It hurts, Dan. I understand. But you have to decide for yourself how to live your life. Forgiving is hard. Leaving is hard too. No one can choose for you." I clutched the mug in my hands. But how can I forgive? I close my eyes and see her with him again. Father sighed, time. Only time can tell. But remember, sometimes, in trying to save what's dead, we lose ourselves. I returned home that evening. Laura was waiting on the porch. "Where have you been?" she asked anxiously. "With my parents." She nodded. "Have you talked to them about me?" "Yes." Her lips trembled. "And what did they say?" "That the choice is mine." She stepped closer. "And what will your choice be?" I looked at her. "I don't know." That night, I lay down on the couch again. I could hear her pacing the room upstairs, walking down the stairs, then back up. She was restless. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. I could see her body in someone else's hands. Every time, like a knife. A few days later, what I feared happened. I was returning home after work. In the parking lot outside the building, there was a car I recognized. A black sedan. Richard. He got out, tall and confident. When he saw me, he froze. "Daniel, get out," I said quietly. I wanted to talk. "Get out before I lose control." He took a step back. It was a mistake. There's nothing between Laura and me anymore. I stepped closer. "A mistake. You destroyed my home. You dare talk about a mistake." He raised his hands. "I'm leaving. But know this. She still loves you." These words cut me to the core. He got into the car and drove away, leaving me with a racing pulse and clenched fists. When I entered the house, Laura was standing by the window. She had seen everything. "Did you talk to him?" she asked. "Yes, and..." I threw the keys on the table. "And he said you still love me. Funny, right?" She stepped closer to me. "It's true, Daniel. I love you." I looked at her and felt everything inside me tear apart. Love and hate warred within me, tearing me apart. That night was the hardest. I didn't sleep a minute. I walked around the house, looking at photographs, our happy faces, trips, holidays. Every photo now seemed like a mockery. Towards morning, I realized we can't go on living like this. I have to decide. Either we try to save this marriage, or I leave forever, and the choice can no longer be avoided. I woke up at dawn. Or rather, I didn't wake up, I didn't sleep. Lying on the couch, I stared at the ceiling and realized I couldn't put it off any longer. A decision had to be made today. The house was silent. Laura was asleep upstairs, or pretending to be. I got ready, dressed, and went outside. The air was cold but fresh. I walked toward the embankment where I always did my best thinking. I sat on a bench and looked at the water. The waves lapped over the rocks, and there was something comforting in that sound. Where the water meets the shore, there's no betrayal. There, everything is honest, the ebb and flow of the tides. I went over everything that had happened in the last few days in my head. The image was the same, me, returning with cake, and the bedroom door that had opened too soon. Laura in someone else's arms, her gaze. My heart, which had broken at that moment. Is it possible to live after this? Is it possible to forgive? My phone vibrated. A message from Mark. "Have you decided?" I didn't answer right away. I knew the decision had to come from within. When I returned home, I found Laura in the living room. She was sitting on the couch, dressed in jeans and a sweater as if she'd been waiting for me. "You left early," she said. "I was thinking," I replied. She stood up. Her hands were shaking and I took a deep breath. Laura, I can't live like this anymore. I can't look at you and not see him. I can't go to bed and not remember that night. She pressed her palms to her face. Daniel, please, give me a chance. I gave you a chance, I interrupted. I've been trying these past few days. But the more I try, the more I realize I'm no longer the person who believed in you. Tears streamed down her cheeks. So that's it. I nodded. I picked up my bag and started packing. Not everything, just the essentials. I left the rest. Every shirt, every book bore a trace of us together. I didn't want to take it with me. Laura stood by the bedroom door, watching me pack. Daniel, she whispered, I love you. I stopped and looked at her. I loved you too. But love can't survive where there is no trust. I left the house. The sun was shining brightly outside, and for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe freely. Painfully, but freely. I rented a small apartment downtown. The first few days were strange. The silence hummed in my ears. I cooked dinner, washed the dishes, and every action felt empty. But at the same time, I began to find myself again. Laura was writing letters, messages, calls. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Let's try again. I didn't answer. Not because I hated it, but because I knew that if I answered, I'd be sucked back in. Mark came to visit a week later. He brought beer and sat down on the couch. So, how are you? I shrugged. Bad, but better than before. He nodded. You did the right thing. And if I was wrong? I asked. Mark looked at me seriously. It would be a mistake to stay where you've stopped being yourself. 2 months passed. I was learning to live again. Sometimes I had nightmares I'd open the bedroom door again and my heart would break. But during the day, I learned to smile. I went jogging, met up with friends, took on new projects at work. Laura disappeared from my sight. She stopped writing. I knew it was hard for her too, but we both made a choice. One day, I went into that same bakery again. There was a strawberry cake in the display case. The same as then. I stared at it for a long time, and suddenly I realized the cake was no longer a symbol of pain. It was a symbol of my perseverance. That I was able to walk away when my heart was broken. I bought the cake. I brought it home. I put it on the table. I cut a slice and ate it. And for the first time in a long time, I tasted it. I don't know what will happen next. Will there be new love? Will there be a family? But I know one thing. I chose myself, and this time it was the right choice.